Hi! Welcome to the Dumps, the place for all your side needs. We're back with Matthew here. Now, what would you like to say for yourself, little bitch?
Don't let the little whore into my house again, bitch. There we go.
So Silver?
Uh, yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah,
But welcome back.
yeah, welcome
again.
back. I
The
swear,
third time.
I'm going a little mad. This is like the third time you've been here. We all go a little mad sometimes, but you're here for
Yeah.
a third time.
Yeah.
God, ain't that
I
riveting?
always ring my way back.
You always ring your way
And
back.
you have like fucking 4 cappy cats at this point. What? Yeah, it's fine.
This is fair.
I'm returning
This is a
the
fair.
favor.
This is a fair
Yeah.
trade. It's like when Walter White and Jesse Pinkman shake hands during season 4. Like you can agree on that. It's
Yeah, exactly.
Is this season 4? I hope I'm right. I swear.
No, it's in Face Off. Yeah, they did the
Yeah.
handshake.
Because man, I haven't watched Breaking Bad like since.
Maybe you can
I
do a
did two
Breaking
rewatch.
Bad rewatch after the Better Call Saul one.
Maybe.
Or something.
Maybe.
That'd be cool.
That'd be.
Maybe because you can get.
Because I
that'd
think
be
it's
cool.
been like
You get
2
the first-
years since I've rewatched the show because I've seen the show
Yeah.
twice. So it seems fair. But yeah. Anyway, I'm gonna get right to the gist here. We're talking about the Psycho franchise. So you might be thinking, wait, what? You most of you probably don't even know there's a Psycho 2 or a Psycho 3 or a Psycho 4. For the love of God, I think that's better for your mental
Or a
health.
Bates Motel.
Oh God.
Or a RAZZIE nominated for Worst Picture remake. But
Yeah, but those exist. They're here.
yeah, see, Anna, it's weird. Psycho, obviously the first one,
Yeah.
is like one of the most famous horror movies of all time. Yet I don't think most people, when they think Psycho, it's not like, well, they don't immediately go, oh yeah, the Psycho franchise. Most people probably just think it's the one movie.
Yeah.
Not me, of course, because I watched the Psycho reviews back in the day on Red Letter
Oh,
Media, so I don't
yeah.
really know about
See,
these.
we're the
But-
review bros. That's another title I like to call myself.
Eh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah,
But yeah, see,
it's
yeah.
just like
that was mainly what. I don't know. Did you know about the Psycho sequels beforehand? Because that's probably how I found out.
I
even
knew
exist
they
watching
existed, but I never thought that they would be worth anything of my time. So I just never
those. Mhm.
really cared for it. Like I knew them back when I first
Yeah.
watched it when I was like 8 years old, but I was like, why would I watch Psycho 2?
Oh, yeah.
Because back then I thought, for some reason, I thought Psycho was boring, but that was just like 8-year-old me. It's like, the shower scene's over, and I have to focus on these boring ass white people. Like I don't give a shit.
Why did they change the plot? And I
Yeah,
need like.
I didn't get the
Probably
genius
watch
of it,
Child's
but yeah.
Play 2 again after that.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, Psycho needs no introduction. The 1960 film. It is directed by Alfred Hitchcock and written by I forget Stefan Manif. Fuck, I always forget his damn name. But yeah, that
Joseph Stefano.
yeah, Joseph Stefano.
That's
He they both of these guys. I'm just surprised that they even chose this option because Joseph Stefano at the time he was a new writer, and Hitchcock's method of choosing scripts was that he never wrote the scripts most of the time, so it was always handled by someone else. And the one thing that he did to make sure the script was good is that he gave it to his wife to read, and that was always the sign like, okay, I should make this picture or not. And this was a bit of a crossroads because Hitchcock was in the middle of the end of his like Paramount contract, so he had already moved to Universal at the time. But as you can tell by the poster, if you choose the one with the captions on it, the little titles, you can see it's a Paramount release. But you see, it's a Universal production, which at the time was kind of a novel thing, because back then it was always this studio. You work for this studio, or contracted by this studio, and you had to work at their studio. And so this film was basically had a couple cripples on it, because you also had the fact that no one wanted to make this movie. No one, just fucking no one. Because I think you know about this, because like Hitchcock. They were forced to go with a lower budget since no one wanted to invest that much money into this. Because his last movie
I heard about this.
was a big success. It was North by Northwest, and
and then
yeah,
I don't know, this movie. I'm pretty sure even he shot it with his TV crew that he did.
Yeah.
Alfred Hitchcock Presents.
Yeah,
his
that's what he
TV
did.
show with, and then
Yeah.
and then it was like I don't know. It's interesting because Vertigo and North by Northwest are his two movies before this, and those have like this really nice, like bright Technicolor look. And then you look at Psycho, and it's the purposefully black and white, which I don't know. You could argue it's like a technical choice. I know it's just because Hitchcock was going cheap,
Yeah, he was
but
going
it kind
cheap.
of works as like a techno choice for it. And
Yeah,
then I don't know. It's a lot more like just low budget in
atmospheric.
general, and yeah. And in contrast to his other stuff, it's really interesting, like
Yeah,
on
no,
that lens.
just
But
historically, this movie just feels so off because if you're making a low
right.
budget horror movie at around like the 50s, 60s, that was kind of fucking crazy because back then you had B horror movies, where they were advertised by William Castle, and so they were always known as these cheap movies that didn't really mean anything. And
Yeah,
Hitchcock, he basically just wanted to have a little laugh about it because apparently Hitchcock thought it was more of an amusing movie than it was a horror movie. And he what his thought process was is that I don't find this scary. It's kind of a comedy to me, like in how it basically toys with the audience because Hitchcock loved toying with the audience and he loved like planning these things out in order to just mess with them. That's why he was called the master of suspense, not because he was, but because he had that sort of audience appeal and he just tricked them a lot of the time. It was always so funny to me. And
yeah.
hearing him talk
I don't
about
know
it
if you
was
look
really
at it
funny.
through that lens, the
Yeah.
movie's kind of. I don't know. If you look at it through that lens, the movie's kind of a black comedy because it sets up all these things, and then it's like, no, not actually. That's not important. Yeah,
Yeah.
she's dead actually,
She's dead.
but which it's weird. I always it's one of the biggest twists in like movie history because the but like it's weird. The shower scene is so iconic. I even forget it's like a subversion at all because it's such
Yeah.
a big thing. But I don't know, really, in the context of the movie, it's so well done because like it spends so much time in the beginning being like, all right, we got our main character, Marion Crane. She's on the
Mhm.
run from the law with this money, right?
Mhm.
And you
For
spend like the
forty
first,
thousand
I think,
dollars.
roughly 40, 45
Yeah.
minutes. They're like, how's Marion gonna get away? What's gonna happen next? And then you stop at the Bates Motel, right, where you're introduced to Norman and everything. You're like, okay, this is just gonna be our little stop off before the action gets going again. And then no, it's not a stop off at all because that one decision sets in course the rest of the movie, and then she dies, and that you switch POVs from there because you go to Norman and then her sister and then all that. It's like really well done because it's not just a waste of time. It's not
No,
like
no, no.
no, not actually because it still builds tone and builds the ideas of the movie that are set up later. It's just a really good like subversion on that base level. That's what I've always admired this movie for. Even though you kind of know what's coming if you're like me, because like I've said, that shower scene is so like
The shower scene
iconic.
is so
You kind of see
iconic.
that
If you
coming.
there's a couple of 80s commercials I saw of them like parodying the shower scene and then advertising like
Yeah,
the stupid fucking like cereal boxes or like shampoo. It's really funny. But
yeah,
for as ingrained as that scene is in pop culture, it's so well done
yeah,
because even if it seems pointless in terms of the if you're looking at the basic plot line, what it actually connects to thematically and character wise is that it also sets up Norman, and it also sets up the whole theme of the movie of it being this is one of my favorite quotes in the movie, a dirty night. It's a dirty movie, not in the fact that it shows
yeah,
violence, but in the fact that it implies a lot of it. Because even the shower scene, it is one of the rare like editing moments that feels so instantaneous and feels kind of scattered because if you're looking at it from timeline wise, it doesn't feel right because they're switching shots and it's just like they're at
yeah.
like
It's a
different
lot of
points of the
quick
stabbing.
cuts.
Yeah, quick cuts, but
Yeah,
they're at like different points in the stabbing within this like 1 minute time frame. It's just like switching back and forth to like a couple seconds ago, a couple seconds after, and it's like so disorienting, which is what makes it so iconic in the first place. And then the music is so
yeah,
perfect for that scene. It's so well done.
yeah. Yeah, I heard that apparently Hitchcock was like he originally shot it without music because he thought I don't know, he thought it'd be more like
Wait, really?
shocking or whatever to not.
Oh,
Yeah, I heard about this. He didn't want to like he thought, oh, let's not put music at that part to like I don't know, think add emphasis or something. But then I think I don't know, it was either his wife or someone on the crew who was like, this isn't because when he was actually editing it together, he was like, no, that doesn't
it
quite
isn't
work.
right.
Which is weird because like the music is a big part of that. They're like Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
like a big part of why the scene is so like iconic, really. So it's weird that it would have been without that. But yeah, I don't know. It definitely adds a lot to it, which is,
Yeah,
you know,
no.
makes sense to put
I
it in
just
every
can't
scene.
imagine it without the music cuz I just genuinely think it's just such a core part of the movie. Even before the iconic scene, Bernard Herman, yeah, that's his name.
Okay.
He's just really good at like setting that tone, but without having to enforce that through like story or referring to it. Because there's a scene of Marion driving and she's just like sitting there. And apparently Hitchcock had to whisper because Hitchcock already in his mind had the idea of what voices she would be hearing in her head while driving to the Bates Motel, and so it was so planned out, and that's what makes that scene feel so kinetic because you have that music, then you have the voiceover, which was already planned out in the first place, and Marion Crane's actor is so good at expressing that sort of fear of getting figured out by having to fully understand the person like that. And yeah, a lot of this movie is about that whole mystery aspect, and that's what makes it so thrilling because it's not just from a basic "who killed Marion" vibe, where it's just like, well, yeah, it's Norman. On that basic
Mhm.
level, it's like that's not interesting. But the fact is, you have this character who's also immoral, who's having to break the rules, and she gets stabbed in the back for it, I guess. And
Yeah,
the whole moral questions of the movie, I'm kind of blurred on because a lot of it is very because I just have different ways of like viewing the intentions of the film. Because obviously, if you look at the marketing of the movie, we could talk about that, and it's just
oh yeah,
insane to me. Because there's such a contrast to how serious the tone movie is, but then also Hitchcock is saying it's a comedy, and then the advertisements are even more strange because they parodied,
yeah,
like those Castle commercials that used to advertise like cheap '50s horror movies, where it's just a man describing the murders, and
yeah.
yeah, I
And
don't
then there
know.
was this whole like there was that, and then there was this whole marketing gimmick where Hitchcock's like, you can't show up late to Psycho or else you'll not be admitted. And it's like I think the idea was he didn't want people coming in late and then being like, well, where's Marion Crane? What happened? But in retrospect, that was definitely just kind of like it seems very gimmicky in retrospect. That, oh, okay, you're not gonna lie
Yeah,
to the
well, yeah,
audience then
cause the
because of this.
poster
But
just
like,
advertised Janet Lee, and there's also yeah Vera Miles, who's their sister. She'll probably come later in the movie. It's like, oh yeah, Anthony Perkins, because around the time Anthony Perkins was a teen idol, so most people saw him as Anthony Perkins. Sweet little boy. He's kind of shy, kind of inept, and then you see the twist, and it's just like,
oh,
oh,
oh boy.
and the fact that like he so deliberately, I feel like Hitchcock gets just a laugh out of the fact that he advertised the movie this way. It's just kind of funny to imagine it. And without that sort of marketing, I don't think the movie would be as iconic as it is because that audience expectations were so different to compare to modern times. Because now, killers, we've sort of commodified them in a way because you have Columbine murders and people get influenced by that, and the fact that just in general, like the 70s and 80s, they just started to get really into the fact that look at this killer, look how psychotic he is. And this movie was kind of ahead of the curve at that time. It was just insane to me because it sort of created that culture. And I don't think Hitchcock
Yeah.
intended for that way, but that was just kind of sort of how he operated. Because I sort of think of Hitchcock as not just a director, but sort of like a showman. Because he's not very always intending for the fact to just stick to the themes of everything, but he also just likes to just mess with the audience a lot, which this obviously this movie definitely goes into that. Um,
Yeah, it's
yeah,
kind of funny how Hitchcock he has like this reputation as one of the best directors, which often because yeah he's made some of the best movies, but then a lot of his movies are just fucking with his audience to
yeah,
see like this especially and all that. But yeah, no, it all really worked out very well specifically for this and all of his
yeah,
other stuff. Uh, a big part of it, obviously, is we were talking about Anthony Perkins and his reputation, like at the time, which probably also factored into it.
yeah,
But obviously, I think a constant throughout all well, all four of them that he's in. He's not in Bates Motel or the remake, obviously. But no matter how fucking weird these movies get, Anthony Perkins is always really trying, which I respect,
Yeah,
especially in this one. Obviously, he does like, which I don't know, we'll get to it when we talk about Psycho '98 because that's like a big example of how this like can go wrong. But the Anthony Perkins' like look and specific mannerisms really get the character of Norman Bates right because it's all about the subversion of it, right? Because at the beginning you're like before you suspected anything, not going into the movie knowing nothing, you're like you kind of already get the impression that he's a little off, like he's like a little socially inept, I
yeah,
guess
yeah,
to
yeah,
say it
yeah.
nicely, but no, they have a he's nice. They have a nice conversation and everything. And then like you see like the sort of foreshadowing of there when he starts talking about his mother, and that's when he gets like more defensive and more angry about it. And then when Marion's killed and you see him like cleaning up and everything, you feel really bad for him because even though he's awkward and like inept and everything, it's like, oh, poor Norman, his mother killed someone again. What? Oh, but then you find out that's actually him, obviously, and that's the big twist. And
Yeah,
then
no,
that's all
it's
really
it's
well
kind
done
of to
too.
get a
He's such
background
a
on Perkins. If you don't know about this, at the time it was kind of an open Hollywood secret that he was gay. Because at the time
yeah
he was sort of this because he grew up without a father as well. That's kind of the
oh
strange thing because he grew up without a father, which is kind of ironic
oh
considering the fact that his
oh.
character has a lack of father
That's
figure.
rather odd timing. Jeez,
That's
but
rather odd timing, but yeah, Anthony Perkins is just he has the mannerisms of this kind of shy guy attitude. Because if you look at like old like TV show appearances from him, he sort of acts just like Norman Bates. It was as if he was made for this role, and he just fits it perfectly. Just he has the sort of tall, lanky side to him, and he's also sort of just like awkwardly posed, and he sort of awkwardly talks. And he was originally always
mm,
posed as this like shy guy, like teen idol. You always wanted to see him. He was always a nice guy, and yeah, that specific type of casting just adds so much more to the twist of it all. And considering the fact that he was queer and at the time he had what was his boyfriend's name, Tab Hunter, as like his boyfriend around the time, it's kind of fitting that like around this time it's just like, oh, he's playing a transvestite, and it's just like people interpret it in that way. And I don't know, there's kind of a complicated like look into like the way you can interpret that whole thing. Some people call this movie transphobic, which it is not. I don't believe it
oh
is.
no, I
Uh,
don't think so.
cause
That's a stretch.
I
But
know like this is the 50s, 60s. That's kind of believable to consider because like standards around the 50s, 60s, queers, trans people, they weren't really considered human beings, which that sucks. And I'm not sure
yeah,
what like Hitchcock's worldview was at this point, but I don't think his intentions were meant to be that way based on the film because he gives more of a reason for the fact that he's not transvestite. They specify that, and it's more of the fact that he was, I guess, just he had mother control of him, which comes from the fact that there's a fear of having to be sheltered and having all these secrets, dirty night, that type of thing. That's constant motif
yeah.
in the movie, having to be, I guess, held together by family, and there's also that sort of mistrust. But I just don't think you should interpret Norman that way because while yes, it's a bit weird that they, I guess they sort of it did popularize the whole idea of gay people equals killers and murderers, which I don't think that's
Mhm.
what they wanted for to happen, but it just happens out of
Well,
circumstance because you're dealing with such a like how do I describe this like taboo topic, so it's just kind of
yeah, yeah.
inevitable, and that sucks. But I just genuinely don't think that's how you're supposed to read the movie.
Well, no. See, I think if you were supposed to read it that way, they would have made Norman less sympathetic than he actually is. Because I think at the end, the movie still wants you to feel bad for him. Because when he's not really himself when he's actually doing all this shit. Clearly, he has some sort of like mental issue. The movie doesn't like See, the movie tries to explain it at the end, which is probably my least favorite scene in the movie when the psychiatrist just explains, "Oh, this is what's
Yeah,
happening."
no,
That
that's
kind of makes it
my
all
the two
less
parts I
vague.
just don't
But
like about the movie is the switch up to this boring like I gotta say the okay, Marion's sister's husband, he sucks. He's terrible at acting. I'm just got to
he's
say
kind of
that.
boring.
I hate him.
I don't care about.
He's terrible. He's a terrible actor. I
Eh.
have to say it. And the other, well, Marion's sister, she's fine, but they're just very boring things because they're just kind of audience surrogates, and they're the ones that have they're being told the explanation for Norman's sort of disease or sort of mental illness, and that's fine. But just the fact that that exposition scene is there just kind of hinders it for me because I feel like
Yeah, I don't
it
know.
worked much
I
better if
heard
they
that it
don't
was like
explain
a.
it.
I heard it was a studio note. They're like, Hitchcock, you made the movie too vague. Can we like explain it to the audience? Which is why they literally just spell it out. And I don't know.
I
I
know it's
kind of
like
get why it was
audiences
there
around the
because
time, yeah, like I get that,
I don't.
but
I don't
that kind of makes it
respectfully,
kind of poorly
audiences around the
aged.
time were kind of stupid, so that
Yeah,
they
they were
picked
stupid.
up on everything. So I guess you have to explain it, but I don't know. It just kind of
Audiences are
takes away
still
from it a
stupid.
little bit.
Yeah.
I think I don't know. Thing that kind of makes it better is I was reading a while ago. Friend of ours, Hal, had an interpretation of that part. It's like, well, it's not actually just what the psychiatrist like thinks it is. When in reality, no one really knows what is going inside Norman's head, and that's what makes it like more interesting. Obviously, that wasn't the intent, because quite literally, Hitchcock like was forced to put it in, and he doesn't like that scene. It kind of becomes more interesting when you look at it through a different lens like that. But I don't know. It's still just it's definitely my least favorite part of the movie if we're gonna go by that. I do like the end though with the monologue. That part's really good. But
Well,
before
that
that,
part
like
is so fucking good because that's when you
yeah,
see, oh, Norman's been completely entranced by this malevolent force, which is his mother, and now he
yeah.
just can barely recognize him. And also the stuffed birds motif. That part is so fucking good. I love that sort of motif
Oh
because you
man, it's
have,
great.
because at first you're introduced as like, oh, that's kind of a weird hobby as, but something to make him feel busy, to make him feel whole in a way, kind of like stuffing birds, and that works on that level. And there's another thing to consider that the birds when he describes his mother, there's that shot of him like of that upward shot where you see the bird like hanging over him, describing his mother, and that in a way indicates how the mother is sort of represented by the birds, and how the bird, represents the watchful eye of mother, and also indicates that
Yeah.
mother is also dead, and that uh, this is just that this whole sort of hobby is what is controlling him. That makes him feel isolated. And it's kind of ironic since birds are free creatures in a way because they get to fly around and all that shit. That
Yeah.
type of irony, that type of fucking motif, that is brilliant. It's not like the most subtle thing in the world, but I just love how it's done, and it's not pointed out to by the end. It's just sort of a thing that you have to interpret,
You can
and
just
that
pick
is
up on
awesome.
it if you want it. It's neat if you notice it. It's like, oh, that's nice. I'm glad they
Yeah,
put
it's
that in there.
nice. Yeah, it's nice to put that in there. They just put so much effort, despite it being such a low budget thing, because they wanted to make low budget horror films feel serious. Because I think Hitchcock at the time described this as his most cinematic movie, which I think I'd like to believe. I haven't seen too much Hitchcock, but I'd like to believe that. I know like
Uh,
Vertigo, Rear Window, those are probably
I've
great
seen
movies. Probably
Vertigo
even better
before
than this,
this,
but yeah.
and yeah, I've seen Vertigo and Rear Window, and those are I don't know. Those are probably equally as cinematic. Vertigo, I think I prefer the look of because, like, I don't know, that like good, real. It's really nice. It's and bright, which is kind of a contrast to this movie. Obviously, it's black and white or whatever. I don't know. That's not a dig to either. Both just work really well in like specific ways. Like I mentioned near the beginning. Obviously, well, it was just because of budget stuff because the why this one is black and white. But I'd argue that like that
Yeah, it's
definitely
a
helps
lot
the
to
movie.
it.
This was around when I think around when black and white was starting to be phased out because like
Yeah, this is
60s was like the
1960.
last major. Yeah, '60s was the last major decade you'd like have big black and white movies like this before the '70s, where
Yeah, by the
color just
mid
became
'60s
mainstream.
or around like later in the early '60s,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
when they kind of just phased out completely. Which, oh well. Eh.
yeah.
I miss now.
It's
Black and white
expected
looks are
sometimes.
kind of just becoming sort of uh an aesthetic, which I don't really like that term aesthetic. It's kind of
Uh,
gross to me because it kind of associate that with that sort of like millennial thing. Was like, oh look at this wonderful aesthetic. Like no, it's just black and white. Just use it as you use it properly. I don't care
Black and
because
white's been resorted to an iMovie filter now. So sad.
oh my god. Yeah. See, when black and white is
But
used
it's
properly, it's just like it's always so cool. But when it isn't, that
mm.
just fucking
And that seems cool
reeks.
because there's a clear distinction between like the directors who care about making something black and white because like oh it fits, whereas opposed to like fucking Zack Snyder's Justice League where it's like I want to make it black and white because that looks cool and edgy. It's
Yeah,
like
that looks.
come on, that just comes off as try hard to me. Where it's like fuck off, you didn't do that for a reason. It's like
Yeah, there's just
it's
a lot of just
black.
they just specific. They everything about this movie was just so specifically chosen. I just love how much it like specifically chose all these things and how they used them.
Yeah.
It's just like kind of like a perfect puzzle piece. It just all comes together in just a well formed manner. You know, except for the ending, which just kind of makes it clear and makes and just like it's kind of like when you finish the puzzle piece and you're looking at it, it's like, hey, look at that. Do you see what that means? Just like we get it.
Whoa.
We can move on. Like you don't need to tell me as an audience
Yeah.
member. But you know, it's 1960s audiences. They were mostly Christians and also idiots. So like, oh well, yeah. Because like back
Oh.
then, you know, the fact that they had to enforce the fact that you had to show up near the beginning of the movie is crazy to me. But yeah, that was kind of the standard back then. Because you could just walk into a movie halfway through and not miss anything. Like I can't imagine doing that and like feeling proud of myself. I just
I don't
no,
know.
that's not.
Well, see, in fairness, at the time, a lot of what was crowding cinemas was like 50s, 60s B movies that had barely any plot, and you just came in to see a monster for 10 minutes. So it's like, I don't know, at the time, I assume that was more acceptable. Because most of those movies are fucking boring. But I don't know, with something like this, like, you can't fucking do that. That's why Hitchcock was so up his ass about it. Which, like, yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I still do think that's a marketing gimmick. But really, I do think, like I said in my brief letterbox review I made a bit back. It's like, yeah, it's really a testament to how good the twist works that they have blatantly had to do that. I think it's neat for one, and yeah, great,
Yeah,
great
yeah.
stuff there.
Yeah, but I don't know. The overall theme of the movie, I know I keep mentioning it, but I just do you have an interpretation of it cuz I don't have like a very clear one for myself. Cuz I know
Not
it's a
like
solid movie all around, just
exact.
like I don't know exactly what it's trying to say. I've tried to
I
think
don't
about it,
know.
but it's just kind of bites it
I
around
don't
on
think
me.
it's yeah, I don't know. I don't know anything exact. A lot of what I'd interpret as like themes is just like we mentioned Hitchcock fucking with the audience. The main thing I was like, this movie's very ironic in nature, where it's like Marianne's like, "All right, I gotta escape from the law, and I'll be a-okay." And then while hiding from danger, she finds the person who fucking kills him, obviously. And that I find very interesting thematically, but also that
Yeah.
was just Hitchcock fucking around. So I don't even know if I could
Yeah, I don't
put
know
that as
because
like
you
I
I
see.
know I'm a bit
See, it's
conflicted
weird.
on like the queer and trans attitudes of this movie because you know you have to consider Anthony Perkins. He grew up without a father who he lost, and he also grew up a lot around a lot of feminine people, and he also had to grow up like having to be commodified as this certain thing. So is this movie about like appearances? Because that could be also another interpretation of the movie. And what does
Maybe
that truly mean? And I don't know. I can't tell if this movie is timeless, but is it outdated in some aspects? Because I just trying to wrap my head around all of it. I'm just kind of like thinking, considering what I've read about like the individual people who worked on the movie. I've never gotten a clear answer to what Psycho truly is about, and maybe that's what makes it so fascinating in a way. I don't know.
I don't know. A lot of it, I think, just kind of comes down to your own interpretation. Because I doubt Alfred Hitchcock would say a lot of the things we're saying about it. Like he was just like, hey, what if I had killed the protagonist halfway through? And I don't like I can impose a greater meaning to that because I find that really interesting. But also, we're not really sure what was going through his head when he made it. So, I don't know. That's just kind of art
Yeah.
in general, what you get out of it and everything. I think it's neat, but
Yeah, no, I
there's a lot.
just
There's a lot to it.
maybe because like there's also the fact of the way you look at how Norman is sort of like trying to disassociate the fact that his mother's dead, and also try to associate from the fact that he is a psychopath by saying this is all Mother's fault, which kind of goes more into the sequels as well. And he's kind of
Mhm.
it's weird because Norman is sort of like, if you rewatch the movie, he's sort of kind of easing like Marion into her death, where he's like, "I'll help you out, I'll do all these things," and he even tricks her earlier on by figuring out, oh, that's a fake identity that she has, and that's the more interesting stuff, like the tiny little details, because I can never understand it, and
Yeah.
I just like how everyone plays out all these things and just like hiding other just small crevices, and I don't think I can even cover it within like this now 30-minute segment, and just like it keeps going
What?
around like that. I, I don't
Yeah.
know.
I don't, I think a lot of well, I'd say a rewatch benefits, but I was just kind of thinking this my first watch because for me, I knew who Norman Bates was from the beginning. I assume most people who have seen
Yeah,
this movie, maybe not you since you were like 8, and I doubt you knew the perception of it when you watched it way before you should have. But
yeah,
it is interesting watching all that beginning stuff like on a first viewing you're you're thinking, yeah, like I said before, it's like you're on for me, you're on Norman's side at the beginning. Like, hey, he got little quirks, but that's just Norman Bates, silly little guy. But then on that rewatch, you're like, it's kind of interesting because you don't know if it's like, is he like malicious from the beginning, or is that just before his like mother's side takes over, or is it like both acting at once? They never like spell that out for you, which I think is neat. And it's
I'm pretty sure the
yeah, I don't know when
novel is sort of more different because what they chose to do
yeah.
is, so you know how Vincent Vaughn feels wrong being in his role in
Yeah,
Psycho 98.
I think I heard about this. Like, apparently, it's so weird because in the
Yeah,
book,
Robert Bloch.
Norman was like a
Yeah, he was like a
schlub or something.
middle-aged old
Yeah,
schlub. Yeah, yeah. And
yeah,
the author, he grew around people such as Lovecraft. Like he got to just like talk with Lovecraft before he died, and it's sort of weird to me. And then it was also inspired by Ed Gein, who also inspired the Texas
oh
Chainsaw
yeah, Ed
Massacre.
Gein.
And
Yeah,
I
famous
don't know
cannibal Ed
what
Gein.
you're supposed to make of that, because you're just like, okay, what what is the original like interpretation of the book? I guess it's sort of like, how do I describe this? Because apparently,
I
some
don't know.
people read like the original book as about toxic masculinity, more or less. And I don't know. I guess like just this movie is just completely different in terms of themes. Because the way I'm pretty sure I heard like the novel's more straightforward, while this is a lot more vague with everything. I don't know. I don't think that's like a
Yeah,
bad thing
I don't know.
necessarily, but
I think ultimately, I haven't read the book. I'm certain it probably works in its own way, but I think it was a welcome change for the movie because I think for the movie to work, you need a reason why Marion would even trust Norman in the first place. Like, I don't know, with the Vince Vaughn movie, which I don't know, I guess we'll get to in the end. His appearance is like does have that fat schlubby appearance. That was like, well, I don't know. He comes across as creepy. They even had him doing an Evangelion hospital scene. So it's like, why would you? You don't have that. I don't have that base level sense that she would trust him from the beginning, even though the lines are the exact same. Just his appearance and everything doesn't like sell it as well. But yeah, no, obviously, like as we've talked about, Anthony Perkins, he's he like perfectly fits this role, even how weirdly it lines up with his actual life and everything.
yeah, it
So
weirdly lines up.
yeah,
Like it's sort of just maybe an open confession to like a lot of what he truly was in a way, but it also kind of pigeonholed him into that sort of psychopath role, which kind of sucks. But it's fine, all things considered, and I'm pretty sure Anthony Perkins, he still likes the movie, so it's probably not like
well,
some
he
people
likes it
say a
enough to come back
homophobic
for all
movie or
these.
something. Like I don't know what to make of this movie, and it's like sort of sexual identity, because while yes I get like, oh, it's a more open interpretation of like sexual identity, I don't know what to make of the Norman side of it. Like I get what they're doing with Marion, but I can never get what they're doing with Norman. And
Yeah, I
oh
don't know.
well. there's just
Mm.
sort of just it's kind of weird to think about, all things considered, based on Anthony Perkins' life. I don't know. I don't know what to make of it. But the more
Yeah.
the more interesting thing is the fact that the sequels are, for the first time of all the three franchises I covered throughout October, it's one of the few times where one of the sequels are actually good. The last time that happened
Yeah.
was Exorcist 3 and Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. So yeah, let's get into Psycho 2.
All
Psycho
right.
2.
Yeah. Okay. So Psycho 2. Um, is we got a big jump here 22 years after, no, 23 years after the first one. And I think you did a little more research than I did, but from what I could gather, it was so the 80s famous boom of slasher franchise. This is the
Hmm.
decade of Friday the 13th, of Elm Street, a lot of low budget slashers in like that time. So I think the idea was they're like, okay, how are we going to capitalize on this Universal or whatever? It's like, oh, we own Psycho, which at this point had become one of the most famous horror films ever made. So like, all right, let's bring back Norman Bates and everything for the new decade of horror. And you think it would go horribly based on that fact and how cheap that sounds, which is ironic. The original Psycho is kind of cheap as we've gone over,
Yeah,
but
so is
no,
Psycho 2
this
because there's
movie
gonna be a
fucking
cable movie
rocks.
too.
Honestly, I really.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. But
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Psycho
and
2 is great. Like
Psycho.
actually, it's
You know,
good.
I love. I really love this movie. Actually, I know a lot of people. It's kind of embarrassing. I bet a new generation has discovered Psycho 2 because in Scream 6, there's a line where a character goes, "Psycho 2 is underrated," and it sounds like a fucking joke. It's like, well, what is a Scream sequel is gonna tell me what the best Psycho is? Get out of here. But no, they're right. Actually, this movie is really good. I like. Definitely the best Psycho sequel, which is not a high bar, but
Not a
I
high
don't know, I
bar.
still think it's neat. But yeah, it surprisingly continues Norman in a really neat way. Because the general plot is our boy Norman Bates. He's got out after serving his 22-year sentence, and he's gone back to the hotel and everything. He's gonna figure out his life again. But Lila Loomis from the last movie, she's like, nah, we can't let Norman go free again. She killed my sister and everything. And then as Norman is trying to regain his like consciousness in life, slowly over time people are starting to fuck with him, and you don't know if it's him going insane again or if he's being manipulated. It's a whole thing. But that's a
Yeah,
general. There's more details to it than that. But I think they did a really good job at expanding the first movie, which is, it sounds insane, but really they do take a neat direction with it that I really like personally. So I'm
yeah.
glad I got to this one now.
Yeah, no, cause if you had a problem with the way they portrayed psychopaths in the original, this one kind of rectifies it because it sort of gives us the a sort of definition of the fact that people can be redeemed. And the fact is, you think redeeming a psychopath sounds insane, but you see, Norman is a very specific case where it's like this is sort of trauma from back when he was younger. The fact that his mother had so much control over him, and that adds a lot more dimension to him. And Tom Holland, the writer
Yeah.
for this movie, who directed Fright Night and Child's Play, the original, his intention was mainly just to try to engender fucking Norman and to humanize him a lot more than what originally he was interested in being sort of like you said. It was just sort of like, oh, it's 80s slasher boom, so we might as well make fucking Psycho 2. And the fact that it was made for
Yeah.
cable, it was originally gonna be made for cable, made the fact that when writing the script, Tom Holland had so much freedom. And if I know I keep saying Tom Holland, but I'm not talking about the one who's in the Spider-Man movies, you goddamn millennials. I'm talking about the one who directed Child's Play 1988. But yeah,
Yeah.
I appreciate the fact that he was given freedom, even though it was inadvertently, which creates this very just well-rounded script. I'm surprised by
Yeah.
that, and it adds a
Mhm.
lot more. There's just a lot of tiny details that make it so much more interesting. Because when Norman is like, it's been 22 years, and he's sent back to like the house, which seems stupid. Like, why would you send a recently
Yeah,
recovered
why would you send them
psychopath
back to the
to
place
back
that
to
like
your
caused his trauma? Yeah, it's kind of weird. But
Yeah, but there's a small line in there. There's a small silver lining where they say, "Oh yeah, we couldn't get you a social worker because our budget's cut." So it could be just government funding being low at the time. So that could be an excuse. I'm not saying that
yeah, they
rectifies
have
the
like a little
issue,
like
but
yeah.
like
It
yeah.
makes it make more sense than it would otherwise, I guess, is to say. But it's
Yeah,
still,
another thing that could be
it
considered
works
is like
well enough.
he's been legally deemed like uninsane anymore. He's just been legally deemed that, so it's fine for the most part. It's there's a couple holes you could poke in there, but I don't really care about that. What I really care about is the way Anthony Perkins portrays that sort of awkwardness. He still has the awkwardness of Norman since, he's still socially inept. He hasn't talked to many people, and I doubt
Yeah,
he's talked to many people in his asylum or whatever he went. So he's still kind of that awkward guy, but he's trying to do better, and he's a working man. And I like the small details of him not knowing what to do at the diner. And there's also a part where he's just kind of
yeah,
like he's trying to sort of act normal, but he just like it's just not right since everyone else just views him as Norman Bates, not Norman as
yeah.
like a human being. That's cool to me.
A lot of this movie, he just kind of looks like confused, I guess to say. Norm's just kind of bumbling around, which yeah, that makes sense. He just got out of a literal mental asylum. He's trying to find his way
Yeah.
around and
Yeah,
everything.
at one point
And
Norman doesn't like understand sarcasm like when they say when someone does a sarcastic joke, he doesn't understand what it means because he's still like kind of socially fucking awkward. So
yeah,
there's nothing to
exactly.
blame about him. There's just something so human about the way they portray him in here, and it's just helped by how much Anthony Perkins puts so much personality in such a subdued version of Norman Bates. Like the original, that's by the 1960 standard. That was kind of subdued, but that still feels very theatrical because Anthony Perkins came from like a New York theater crowd, so he was kind of a theater actor before. So of course he has that sort of vibrato in there. But in this, it feels very naturalistic because I think he got into method acting around this time, which is neat. I like
Yeah,
how Anthony plays it out. Just it's cool to me.
yeah. There's a really good contrast with this movie that I really like. See, Norman, you're on his side for this movie at least. They do a really good job making you like sympathize with him because he's trying to get back on his feet. He works at this local diner.
Yeah.
He's getting back. He even forms this nice relationship with Lila's daughter. Yeah, Lila's
Yeah,
daughter.
yeah.
It's nice, but then it's like it's great because you want to see Norman improve, but also you understand the perspectives of like Lila and the other people
Yeah,
who
you
are
understand why
so
Mary is
because
just
yeah,
kind of skeptical of him. Like,
yeah,
originally she
it's like
was.
yeah,
The twist reveals that her and Lila Loomis, the previous victim from the last movie, they're trying to stop him and send him back to the asylum, which is a neat way of trying to look at the way people view serial killers at the time. Because this was made. Apparently, there's actually a book. By the same Robert Bloch made a sequel to his original novel, and it was
oh, I
completely
did not know
different.
that actually.
Yeah, but it
Oh,
still
that's
kind of
nice.
follows the same thing because the Psycho 2 apparently takes place in Hollywood and is about how serial killers are portrayed in media. That's even more meta than what they went with here because
Oh,
this
this
that's more
weird.
of a
Yeah.
that sounds more of like a screen plot from like the 90s, but no, this is a book that was made in the 80s. That's crazy to me because apparently
Oh yeah,
Robert
it is
Bloch's
weird.
sort of intention was that he was starting to realize how common the slasher was and how common the serial killer was on the news, and that sort of applies to Psycho 2, where they're talking about how they're just looking at Norman as the guy who killed like multiple people and his mother, and that's a neat theme to it, where it's just like they won't accept him for who he is now, but rather pigeonhole him as who he once would be, and they don't accept any sort of redemption because they always portray psychopaths as an absolute rather than like a human being. Like they're just kind of a caricature
Yeah,
to most
that's the
people.
whole thing of this movie. It tries to humanize him more, adds that like depth to Norman, which
I mean,
yeah,
there
it's
already
done really
was
well.
in the
Well,
'60s,
yeah,
in the
but
1961, but it
you
was
know, it
kind of more
adds like
straightforward.
even more to him in
Yeah,
this because obviously you see more of him and like his perspectives after this. It doesn't really. I love though. There's like this for a lot of the movie. You don't know if someone's actually fucking with him or if it's all
yeah,
in his
yeah.
head and he's actually doing something again, which is it adds this like mystery element to which the original already had, but it's like neat. I think it's really cool how they like play with that. and
Cause
how it all
yeah,
works.
cause I know
I'm
like
glad
Norman
that
killed some people in there, but it wasn't.
yeah
Cause you're the first guy he kills, the asshole fucking guy who used to own the motel, who runs it as this sort of like modern day party house hotel, which is a neat way of like representing like Norman's so out of his element and out of time that he's kind of like, wow, this is a new society, and this is how
yeah
the world operates, and then it's like, yeah, this guy fucking sucks, and he kills him, but it's for a good reason, and even earlier on, he holds temptations away from him when he sees the knife nearby, and that's a really cool thing because it's sort of adding more to the fact that yeah, Norman is doing better, but it's really what others, because Norman inherently as a character is influenced by others, so the only reason he could kill was because he's influenced by other bad
yeah
people. That is awesome to me.
yeah
I love the way they use that. It's awesome. I love
yeah.
that.
It's kind of ironic because really, if anyone like if they just
If
left
they just
Norman
left him
alone,
alone,
nothing
just
bad
leave
would
him
happen.
alone.
Like exactly, if he just fucking lived his life, nothing would have happened in this movie, and everyone would be
If he had
fine.
like a
But
good like
ironically,
support
yeah,
system and like he stayed away from those type of people, he'd be a happy person. But no, it's kind of
yeah,
like a
it's just
tragic tale.
ironic in like trying to like interact with him. They're just creating the problem they want to
Yeah,
stop. It's really cool, like
it's sort of
infatuating how
genius in a way. Like it's so
yeah,
cool.
yeah.
Fucking Christ,
It's
it's
yeah, it's just
yeah.
a really cool movie. Yeah,
It's such a this is such a fun movie. This is such a nice movie.
yeah,
I just I didn't expect it to be as good as it is, but it's so investing and I love like a lot of it. Oh my god.
yeah.
Yeah, Mary is a good character too. I like how she's like
Oh
conflicted
yeah, no,
between like that
yeah.
whole thing
It's
cuz
it's
originally that
nice
was
because she's like,
her intention was to like
yeah,
fuck with him, but now he's just like enjoying his company.
yeah. It's neat because she was like supposed to be in on it because she's Lila's daughter, but then like, they have like genuinely sweet scenes of each other. Like it's nice. They like actually get along, and so I enjoy that. And like, yeah, again, it creates this like extra element to it because yeah, Norman's having this like nice time with her, but like, oh, you wonder is he gonna like fuck it all up and go back to old habits or whatever? Because they try to parallel, I think, literally a name. Mary sounds like Marion, and that's like supposed to like parallel it, but you don't
Yeah.
know. Is Norman gonna fuck it up again, or is that the only reason why she's even talking to her? But turns out no, that it's just a nice dynamic. But it's really cool. This movie's neat. I
I
like
like
how it
how they
works.
explain how like Mother shows up and how like that's just Lila Loomis dressing up, or it's
Yeah,
Mary showing up as it, and then sometimes it's just
yeah,
Norman in his head thinking about it because there's that one
yeah.
scene
With the fucking
where the
phone
phone
calls, you don't know
call,
if
yeah,
anyone's calling.
because
Yeah, you
no
don't know
one's
if anyone's
there,
calling
no
him
one's there,
or not.
and Lila
Yeah,
has to, no, Mary has to sort of like connect through the other phone line, or has to dress up as Mother to like sort of lead him back to where he should be and how he should be doing. And, that sort of like transformation for Mary for having to save him rather than deceive him, and it's just like so well done. And you think it'd be confusing, but no, it just sort of makes all sense when you piece it all together. It's so cool. God,
yeah, yeah. There's also there's like the
yeah.
notes when he's at the diner that they're sent from his mother, and it's like, don't talk to. I quoted at the beginning. I forget the exact thing. It's something like, don't talk to that whore again, or something, and it's referring to
To let that whore
Mary
into
and
my house
talking to.
again.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That,
And
and
then
that's
that's
cool
sort of
too.
in his
Because like,
head.
is that
Yeah.
yeah,
Great.
you don't know. Was that an actual no? You don't know, and that's what's so interesting about the movie to me. Has this like real
Sort
depth to it that I think
it's like it's
is
sort of a
neat.
psychological thriller. It's so cool though. I don't Because for a
Yeah,
TV
yeah,
movie, they
exactly.
put way too much effort into the writing here. Like I'm surprised by it. But the directing, uh, it's
It's solid. There's not
it's
much to like complain
it's
about,
TV
really.
movie quality, but like sort of
It's
kind of
not
above it.
Hitchcock, obviously, which is like I'd expect that you're going from like one of the greatest like directors of our time, just got guy who made
Yeah, some
Child's Play.
Australian director. Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't know. I think there is some cool stuff in here. My favorite shot is actually, I love at the beginning when they play. Okay, first it's like, oh, they're just playing the shower scene because it's iconic, and I was like rolling my eyes. But then no, they do a really cool shot
They do a
where
cool,
it
really cool
pans out to the
transition.
house. Yeah,
Yeah.
and then it transitions from the black and white to the color as it goes from literally nighttime to daytime. That's
Oh, that's
really
such a
cool,
cool
actually.
credit sequence too.
Yeah,
Fuck,
yeah,
it's
I love that.
awesome.
Apparently, I've seen people say that this movie, like, you can watch it in black and white, and it like still looks good because of the like you can double feature this with the first one. I didn't actually try
I
that. I
should
should
try
try to
that.
find if there's like a black and white color of cut of Psycho 2, which that'd be cool. If I ever rewatch this movie, I might try that. But yeah,
Yeah, I love
it's
that.
neat how well this
Oh,
pairs
I
with
should
the
have mentioned
original
like during
too.
the
Oh yeah.
original Psycho because that also has a great
Mhm.
credit sequence. I just wanted to say that. Saul
Oh yeah,
Bass,
the
great.
song.
Yeah, and also another
I
thing.
can't
Apparently,
do the
Saul
dramatic.
Bass, sort of storyboarded the shower scene. I think I neglected to mention that, but yeah, apparently that
Oh,
was.
and I didn't hear
Yeah,
that. No, no,
apparently some say
interesting.
he directed it at in person. No, that's false. That's definitely false. But
No,
yeah, oh well. Yeah, both of these
no.
movies are cool. Both of these movies are awesome. I love them.
Yeah, they pair very well together, and which is weird because you think Psycho and Psycho 2 come from completely different eras of horror. Psycho was pushing the boundaries for the time. I believe that this was still when they had, fuck, I think it's the Hays Code before they had like the
Yeah, the
rating
Hays Code.
system. You couldn't social and it.
Yeah.
And Psycho pushed it way beyond that, which is it was near the tail end because no late '60s when they like abolished that and you could have like
See, the
R-rated
1960
stuff. But
one,
yeah,
I like how it implies the violence, but Psycho 2 is brutal. I love like some of the gore here.
yeah.
I appreciate it. It's neat.
Yeah,
It's kind of cool.
yeah, it is. I will say though, I'm glad I didn't go overboard with it because during the time period, '80s horror was just kind of built on how can we top ourselves, which is why there are so many big franchises that get ludicrously more violent and ridiculous as they go on. And I feel like Psycho 2 could have done that because it is a sequel to a movie that tried pushing boundaries. I think they kind of understood that by the early '80s, the boundaries have been pushed so much, so there's not like they don't like I don't know. I feel like this movie was like overly gratuitously vile, like a fucking Friday the 13th sequel. That would be weird, but they don't do anything
Yeah,
like
no,
that,
this is not
which I appreciated.
this is not on the level of something like I don't know, Friday the 13th, the final chapter. That
Yeah,
movie has some of the best gore effects, but also it is really, really, really brutal. That's a good movie. But yeah,
yeah.
I
A lot of
like
that more
what
goes
it
into
is.
Psycho 3. Actually, that kind of fits more into horror
Yeah,
terms.
no,
We'll get to
that
that in a sec.
we'll get to
Yeah.
that. But yeah, these two
Mhm.
movies they just pair so well to each other, and it kind of
Yeah.
helps that Tom Holland was always a big fan of Hitchcock. Even though he was only the writer in this, I think he would have been really good as a director in this. But all we got was Richard Franken. He did Road Games, I guess. I don't know.
What a stacked filmography here.
Yeah.
Patrick, 1978, and Cloak and Danger,
Who's the
1984.
cinemat? Oh, hold on,
Whoa.
wait. I'm looking at the cinematographer for Psycho 2. Dean Cundey. He did
Oh,
cinematography
fuck, I know
for
that name. Where is it?
Back to the Future,
Oh,
Jurassic
him!
Park,
Oh, him!
The
Oh,
Thing,
fuck him! Wait,
Halloween,
Jack and Jill's in here. Yeah, Jack and Jill,
Who
Flubber,
Framed Roger Rabbit,
Halloween 3,
Halloween
Casper,
2, Escape from New York,
Garfield the movie,
The Fog.
Scooby
What?
Doo, Curse of the Lake Monster,
G- the Flintstones.
Black Shampoo, 1976,
Looney Tunes back in
Jaws of
action.
Satan, Satan's Cheerleaders,
Flubber. Camp Rock.
Gryffindor's Try.
What? What
Yeah,
women
but
want.
remember,
What?
uh, mm, man, poor Dean Cundy. He just no one cared about him after a certain point. So
Yeah, what the
no,
fuck is this filmography? What?
nah,
This
it's
is
weird. I know he
crazy.
was close to John Carpenter, which is why there's so many Carpenter movies in here. He did
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Thing,
wait. I remember. I
Halloween,
remember. I
and
recognize that name, Kundi. Oh my god. I didn't know he did
yeah, because I
Psycho
knew he was
too.
like,
It's crazy.
fuck, I know this guy because he was like, I forget what it was. It was
Uh,
either actually Red Letter Media might have also mentioned, I think, and they're like, probably The Thing. Wait, yeah, they
Review.
did
Yeah, I
the
think they
Thing
did.
review. Yeah, they were like, they mentioned Dean Cundy to talk about the cinematography, and it's like, oh, he went from all these to Jack and Jill. and Flubber, which you could just be like, "What? So now people think Dean Cundy is
Cundy is
bad?
bad.
What the
What
fuck
the fuck
happened?"
happened?
But I don't know. Realistically, he probably just stopped getting people who cared about his talents. Or like,
Well,
"Come
it's
on,
really is
Dean."
attached to Psycho 2 of all things. That's just a strange concept because
Yeah.
this movie looks ugly as fuck. Well, it's not
1 year
bad.
after his
Yeah.
cinematography on The Thing, which is one of the most well choreographed films.
Oh,
So that's something.
that's
But
that is baffling. I didn't even know about this
yeah.
before.
But
I
there
should.
there is like I don't know, there's cool stuff in this, but nothing to like overly write home about. It's not like the most brilliantly shot thing ever. But it's cool.
I
There's
gotta say,
something.
I gotta admit, Psycho 3 has better cinematography, but it's not good.
Well,
Um,
Psycho 3 is just a fucking wacky movie, so that's
yeah, this movie
partially
is
why.
fucking wacky.
There's more interesting shots, but I don't know. Two has some neat things shot, but it's just like I don't know. With Psycho one, I can be like, oh, I really like
Uh,
that shot on that one. With Psycho two, I don't think about it as much. But
yeah, Psycho
I'm not.
2. That was a. It wasn't as enormous of a fucking hit as the original movie. Of course, it wouldn't be, but it
Yeah,
made double its budget, which that's cool. I think a bit more than that, but considering that, that would mean Universal decided to quickly turn out another sequel. And you see, Anthony
yeah.
Perkins did not want to do it. But you see,
So he did,
the
but he directed
yeah,
it
but you
though.
see,
How did that happen?
the only reason that he chose to come on to Psycho 3 was that he wanted to get into directing. So he did Psycho 3, and he directed it.
I don't think that worked out for him. He only has one movie after this, and in retrospect, he regretted Psycho three,
Yeah, he said
which
he
I don't
wasn't
know.
professional enough to do it.
To give credit where it's due, for a directorial debut, this movie is shot really well. There's some neat stuff. I like a lot of that. Psycho 3 as a movie is not very good, but I think it makes some interesting choices, and I like some of it. So we'll get into that. It's
Yeah.
a fun movie. I don't think it's very good. I think to start from the very beginning, it certainly leaves a first impression. The first line is there is no God. And then we cut to some fucking nuns or whatever, and that's our opening.
Yeah.
Very distinct, gets you off the bat. Psycho 3 has this weird religious theming to it that I don't
Yeah,
entirely
no, because apparently the
understand.
opening is in fact a reference to Vertigo. I haven't seen the movie, but that's apparently what his
Oh
reference
yeah,
is.
it is because they walk up the clock tower in like a similar way to like the opening and climax of Vertigo. So I guess that makes sense. Their Hitchcock influence there. But I don't know
Yeah,
as an opening, it's so weird because there's that, and then we get
we
then
get
from there,
the
which is
weird opening. So we have
yeah,
this girl who wants to like fuck Norman so badly. I don't get that.
yeah, Maureen. Which, by the way, fuck. Whenever I heard Maureen, I was like, Maureen
Me
Ponderosa
Ponderosa.
reference. And it was, Glenn Howard seems to be a
Like
pretty
Norman
fun.
he
Wait,
grabs water. He like comes over. He's like, "Why are you a cat now, Maureen?" Oh, I just thought it would be fun. It would make sense considering the previous movies deal with transition. It doesn't. I don't know how people read that into the movies, but yeah. Um,
I am untethered and my rage knows no bounds. That's Norman in
Norman,
this
sit
movie.
down. But yeah.
You bitch.
Yeah. Maureen shows off her tits, and Norman fucks her.
Mm.
It gets real awkward.
It's Yeah,
Yeah.
especially considering by this point, Anthony Perkins is really old, and she's
That that
obviously
that.
much younger. It's like,
uh,
I don't know
I
how
don't know
to
how to
feel
deal with
about
that.
that
Yeah, but
one.
yeah, the whole main plot is like, he's dating this young woman. The way, okay, I gotta
Oh,
point out the way she dies. That was the most hilarious thing to me, because they try to do the Psycho one thing, doing the backwards when Hogarth dies. No,
and when he falls down the
Argogast.
stairs,
I
right?
don't, I don't, I
Yeah,
don't know how to ever say his name. Argogast. I don't know. Argogast.
Arbogast,
Arbogast. Yeah, I think that's how I say it.
Fibercrest.
But yeah,
Sure.
sure. And the way he falls, that it looks cheap. It still looks cheap in Psycho 3 too, because it's basically the same thing. And for some reason, there's this just sharp, like pointy thing at the bottom of the stairs, and she somehow lands on it. That's so goofy. I don't know. This movie kind of
Yeah.
resets things where it's like, actually, Norman cannot be redeemed. He never had a chance to be redeemed.
Yeah, I don't know.
Uh,
That's the main thing I'm like conflicted on with this movie is I don't know. I like the idea that Norman Bates he can be redeemed and he actually can function. Sure, there's the we didn't mention, but the ending of Psycho 2 is kind of weird with it, where it's like, oh, he finds his real mom, but then he like whacks her on the head, and then he uses that as the surrogate
they,
for his idea of mother in his head. It's
yeah,
kind of a weird ending, which I don't. That's probably my least favorite part of Psycho 2. It just kind of seems random. And I don't know. I
seems
don't like how
random.
that
That's
ended.
why that and the way it's shot
Yeah,
is why it's a 7 for me. It's a great movie up until that point. I don't know what's going on, and then
I can overlook some stuff for a low A, but yeah, I
they
can do that.
refer it
But yeah, with
once
this,
in Psycho
yeah,
3, but no one ever mentions it ever again, which I don't know how, because that some goofy shit happens in Psycho
I'm pretty
3.
sure. Yeah, I think it was like the writer of this movie didn't like the ending of Psycho 2, which is why they like just ignore it, and they're like, no, we're not gonna do that. So we'll do our own thing, which this movie certainly does its own thing. But yeah, I don't know. Just with this, it's like I don't like the idea that just Norman just he went a little spooky again, and now he's just evil. Like I don't know. I just think it makes him more one dimensional. He's not as interesting of a
He's not
character
as
in this
interesting
movie,
if you just take away everything he was.
which
Like,
is
no.
weird to me because Perkins is the guy behind the director's chair, so you think he'd like
Yeah, no, the
finish a
problem
little
was is
more,
that the
but
writer didn't give a shit. Like, this is a TV movie, no one
uh,
gives a shit. And then
yeah,
just
I don't get it.
like Perkins just
Oh,
tried
God.
his fucking best, and he's not the best director, but he definitely directs visuals much better than Psycho 2. It's weird,
Yeah.
and I
Well,
don't
this
know.
contribute. I don't think he's trying, but I think his performance in this movie is a little weird because he just is always just. I
He
guess
was
I don't know how to. In all these
he looks
cycle,
like he has
in all
dementia
these
throughout this entire movie.
yeah no,
Is it
I
just
swear in
me?
all of these cycle sequels, Anthony Perkins looks so fucking confused. I guess that's just the best way to describe it. He's like, well, what's going on?
Well, it makes sense
Especially
in
in this
Psycho
movie,
2, but
I
like
don't know.
Psycho 3, he's
Well, in
just
Cycle 2, that's intentional because I know that's how he's adjusting. But in this movie, he's just like he looks like
he
he
looks
looks like
like he
he
has
just wandered
dementia.
on set and was caught.
Like, I
What's
don't know what's
happening?
going on with him. I don't know what's
I
happening.
don't quite understand, but
There's sweet
it's
moments in this. I have to admit, there's sweet moments where they try to do like, oh, Norman could be redeemed, but then in the end they're like, actually, nah, fam, she
mm,
dies. He gets
yeah.
depressed. He goes back to
I
killing.
guess the
I
idea
don't know.
is I don't know. They do some weird thing with it where Norman's like I gotta get away from mother once and for all, which is why he puts himself back. Which it's weird. I do like the part because at the end. The police officer, he's just so like genuinely disappointed. He's like, "Oh, why'd you do that, Norman? You could have just not done." He's just like sad. He's not even angry. He's like, "Oh, come on, you were so close."
You were
And
so
he's just
close.
laughing.
You could have
Yeah,
done so much better, bro. And it's just like, no,
yeah, exactly. It's so
it's so
kind of funny,
sad.
but yeah, and then I
It's
do
kind
like
of, it's like
the
a Saturday morning cartoon where it's like, ah,
he's like,
Norman, not
"Oh."
again. Like, why'd you do
Norman Bates is
that?
at it again, which I don't know.
Uh,
We'll get. Actually, there's not much to get to with Psycho 4, but
Psycho
Psycho
4 is
4 kind
fucking
of makes
weird.
Psycho 4 kind of makes the ending of Psycho 3 weirder because in the first movie he was put away for 20 years for like murder or whatever. But in Psycho 4 he just gets out again after like a couple after murdering someone else. It's like I don't understand. I know that I just don't get it. And it's not like that helped Norman because he's fucking insane again when he gets out the
Yeah,
second
Psycho 3
time.
just ends with him being insane. I don't know what's going on with this movie. Because
Yeah,
this movie's kind of stupid. I don't know how to. Because I don't remember specific plot details, but it's just weird.
I don't know. I love the see. This movie's just weird. My favorite, I think one of my favorite parts is there's this. Fuck, I forget his name, but Norman hires this other guy who worked for the hotel, who's just blatantly sleazy as fuck, and I love him. He's like, he doesn't get a redemption or anything. He's just like an asshole the entire time,
Yeah, I
and
don't
I
get
like him.
it.
He's like,
He's funny.
yeah, yeah, and
He's so bad.
yeah, he's just like
It's like his
blatantly.
and this dude like
Yeah,
apparently yeah the manager the guy he hires he like makes notes of his mother and he like tells him to go to his like apartment room and it leads to like a
Yeah,
fight with Perkins and this random ass dude that Norman hired. It's just weird. I don't know what was happening there. By that point,
yeah.
I think I kind of forgot where the plot was going. I'm just like, oh, okay.
Hmm.
I'm
Yeah, then
kind
he
of going
has like
along with the
that
ride.
weird, yeah, and then he has that weird like sex scene at that one part, which leads to another kill that just shot weirdly, really weirdly. I don't know. See,
There's like
that's
a
what I.
sex dungeon in this movie, and there's a lot of pimp and
Yeah,
like whore representation here. It's crazy.
yeah, it's fucking weird. To give Psycho 3, I think I talked about how 2 doesn't fall into the 80s horror traps more. This one kind of does because there's a lot more random horniness and
This is like the
more graphic deaths.
this
And
is
it's like,
like
okay,
the Friday the 13th Part 5 of the franchise, the new beginning. Cuz
yeah, yeah,
cuz
this
if you
movie
don't
gets really
if you haven't seen
sleepy.
like if you haven't
It,
seen Friday the 13th Part 5, basically it was directed by a porn director, right? And so the whole
okay,
movie
oh
was
yeah, that fucking explains it. But
yeah, and then the
Friday
whole
the
movie was
13th is
just
half porn, anyways.
yeah, it's
But
just sex and sex and sex. Because one scene we're just in the middle of the forest, there's a giant picnic blanket and tent. This dude is just fucking this shit out of this woman, and then she leaves her, and then she gets killed. And that's kind of like the whole movie. Because then there's also a mother and like son, and then they just keep saying the R slur, and I don't know what's going on there. And then there's also just a scene where this dude just randomly kills the fat kid. It's such a weird movie. I could talk
yeah,
about Friday
I don't
the
know.
13th Part 5 like someday. That
Uh,
movie's fucking weird just on its own.
well, you
But
can't
yeah,
do a Friday the 13th episode because too many movies took it.
damn it.
Wah, wah.
Fuck.
Maybe next year.
Screw you, Hal. Damn. Uh, actually, you helped me get that A Critic episode. Never mind. But yeah,
I'll be
uh,
back. But
he'll be back. But yes, Psycho 3. It's the Friday the 13th Part 5 of the franchise. That's all I have to say about it.
yeah,
It's just and then there's Bates
yeah.
Motel.
And then there's Psycho 4. Uh,
Well, okay, Bates Motel had
uh,
it had the guy who was like the main actor who played Norman Bates. He kind of looked like the my my disappointment is
uh,
immeasurable and my days ruined. He kind of looked like that
yeah,
guy. Um,
yeah. I think
Bates
it was a
Motel
really
also
weird
has
turn.
uh,
What
um,
else is in Bates Motel?
uh,
Um, it was a really weird decision to have Norman Bates shout the N word in the Laugh Factory after being heckled by his mother. It was kind of an odd move. That was a little
that's
that was a
uh,
little
that's
wacky. Uh,
is there anything else to say? Uh,
um, I, I I'm looking at the script for Bates Motel right now. It just redirects me to the Evil Dead Rise wiki. I'm not quite. I don't think
Not
there's
quite.
anything here.
There's nothing here.
No, I don't.
So, man,
I think it's empty.
this is kind of we're kind of an awkward segment here because yes, no one really
How do I?
cares about this pilot because all it is like a failed TV pilot. That's all
Uh,
it is. Yeah, like no one
you could
cares.
talk about the successful TV pilot because I know you watched that.
Yeah,
That
yeah, I did.
Bates
Yeah.
Motel. The
Yeah, instead
how
let's talk
was
about the successful Base Motel. So
yeah,
yeah,
okay.
Base Motel 1987 failed TV pilot. We had nothing to say, and the whole that we planned was basically we don't say anything about it. So yeah, I have
Yeah.
nothing to say about it.
Uh,
It was really boring. But yeah,
it's a boring movie.
if you didn't know, there's a 5 season Bates Motel show for some reason. Apparently the later seasons are really good, but I watched the first episode, season 1. It's actually decent.
Mhm.
It's okay because I kind of like what it does in terms of how it portrays Norman's like mother. It's yeah okay, but this is just kind of stupid to me because the way I describe this is it's unnecessary, but I wouldn't ever hate on it for any other reason because usually if I were to be just kind of mean about it, it'd be a 5. But I'm giving it a generous 6 because it's just fine. I like the main two actors. The most funny thing about it is that One of them is from the Conjuring movies, and the other one is from The Good Doctor. Like he's literally the main character in The Good Doctor, so that's really funny because the I am a surgeon thing. I don't know anything else about like The Good Doctor, but that's sort of a thing. So yeah, this show is meant to be a reinterpretation of the origins of the Bates family. It's not necessarily meant to be a prequel to the Psycho because apparently the creator stated that they would rather take the idea of Psycho and create their own thing out of it and to create their own origins out of it, and it doesn't have to be connected to it. So it's sort of a contemporary reinterpretation, and it's set in modern times for some reason, even though Norman and Norma are dressed like 1950s people, so it makes no sense to me. But, that's fine. I don't really care about that. The whole thing is just very dry, and it does not need to be as long as it is, because for some reason it is 48 minutes long, and it is completely unnecessary. Now, I've only seen the first episode, so maybe the pacing gets better from here on out. I have no idea. If you know anything about the show, because I literally know no one who's watched the full thing, I'd really like to know what the fuck is so good about the show that it lasted for 5 seasons. But it's just fine because you have they reveal how Norma's husband or Norman's dad died, and that leads to the course of the events where they have to move 6 months later, and they set up the iconic base motel. But for some reason, this random ass dude's like, "Oh, this is my property. My grandfather used to own this property back in the 1920s, and you're taking it from him. And this is my family's legacy." And they feel bad for him, but ultimately they just tell him to get off their property, and that's sort of what sets in course the big scene where the dude breaks into their house and rapes Norman's mom, and that's a big moment, and then she kills him deliberately, and they have to cover up the body. And there's also the fact that Norman's having to readjust to living in this new town, and he's trying to make friends, but his mother is having security issues because he still wants him to be the sweet innocent child, and also just wants to keep him safe from the dangers of the world, due to that rape scene, and so the previous fact that his father died, and that's kind of a neat bit. I kind of like the way they characterize Norma as sort of human as a mom, considering the fact that all the Psycho sequels, generally the Psycho franchise in general, portrays Mother as more of this malevolent force, and you can imply what she did to Norman, but without having to, I guess, think about exacts. But this show kind of goes into detail about it, even though it's not directly meant to tie into the Psycho franchise, which that's a whole can of worms. And that's cool. My main problem with the show is one scene mainly, and the fact that the pacing's long. It just feels kind of generic because just like, oh, Norman's getting used to high school, and then they have to drag this out for like so long, and when the police show up when they're during after they kill this random dude, they're kind of like, oh, hey, hey, aren't you the you moved in recently? So, oh yeah, we're retooling carpeting because they're trying to cover up the fact that there's blood in the carpeting, so they have to recarpet the whole house. Then they have the body in the shower, which is kind of ironic considering what Psycho is kind of about, and that is a cool part, except for the fact that the cop takes a shit in that bathroom where the body is, and he does not smell the the body of the dead guy they killed. You see, my problem is I like to think of the science of it all, because the stench of a human body it goes through a lot. See, they covered the body with this like sort of like thin carpet thing. I don't think it could cover the smell of the body. I don't think it could keep keep it residue. I get like, oh, it's hidden, can't see it, but I think they could definitely certainly smell it. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe forensic scientists can prove me wrong, but that's generally what I think is like one of the main logical problems of the show. But overall, it's just okay. I like its ideas, but it definitely needs to like define it more. Maybe the show later on does. Maybe it gets more complicated. Maybe it's more better paced that way. But yeah, that's kind of Bates Motel. I don't know how it's lasted for 5 seasons because I don't know the whole story of the Psycho franchise or just the first one in general. I don't know how you could expand that for that long, but I guess it's its own thing. So I wouldn't know exactly where it goes from here on out. Um. Oh well. That's pretty much it. Uh, the unsuccessful pilot, that one's just kind of different because that one's just a load of bullshit. That one's just a load of bullshit because it's kind of like just really boring. It kind of has the same problem as I mentioned with the
Yeah.
the pilot.
Okay, I'm back.
Yeah, I'm still going with this, but yeah, comparing these two pilots, they're both really long, but the other one is a really long movie, while the other is like a pilot episode for a TV show that probably does a lot more with its concept. So, yeah,
I,
Bates Motel
I've heard the
pilot
later seasons of
overall
Bates
6 out of
Motel are
10.
like. I heard that the later seasons of Bates Motel are like a lot better because that's when they like explore the dynamics more of Norman and his mother, which sounds interesting to get more backstory on that. But also, I don't know. For me, I think a prequel
I kind of
series
like
to Psycho.
I was gonna mention this, but I kind of like the mystery of it all. Like I get like
Yeah,
I feel like you
I
can
don't know.
go
I
into
think
specifics about his mother, but you should probably do it properly and with subtlety, unlike the next movie here, Psycho 4, the beginning.
yeah,
No.
I don't know. I think so. I guess we'll get into it now. Psycho 4. This was a made-for-TV movie. The last one
Uh-huh.
with Anthony Perkins, and the last
Who
of the original
sadly,
Psycho.
during this production, he found out he had AIDS, HIV
Uh,
positive around that
yeah, I saw
time.
he like,
Production.
yeah, he passed
He
away
passed away
a
two
couple
years
years
after the
after this
movie.
movie,
Yeah.
which is sad. This is one of his last roles. He still does try. I'll give him that. He never doesn't try in these movies, but it's kind of a sad thing to happen.
It's his worst
So,
performance, but also considering his sickness and his illness around this time, I cannot blame him at all. I will
like, what are you
not
gonna
blame
do?
him
You're
at
gonna
all.
make fun of the acting of a man who has AIDS? Like that's insensitive. You can't do that. But yeah, I don't know. See, I don't know. You might have mentioned it when you just talked about Bates Motel. How it was gone, but I think the idea of making a prequel to Psycho inherently does not work because a lot of the appeal of Psycho, to me at least, is the mystery of it. Psycho is an interesting like you don't know exacts of Norman and his mother. That's kind of what makes it scary because you don't know everything, and that's what's
Yeah.
cool about it to me at least. And I don't know, Psycho 4 tries giving backstory to Norman Bates. Like it's fucking weird. So the
It's
setup
really
of this
bad.
movie is
It's
like
really bad.
so I don't know. This movie is kind of terrible. So the whole thing, the setup of this movie is Norman Bates. He's talking on this radio show about
Yeah.
like
Okay,
psychopaths or whatever.
so we have this
The
radio
main
show,
like
and you have this black
yeah
woman, you have this white dude, and you also have you have infamous director. He's for some reason in this John Landis. For some reason he's
yeah.
here apparently for some reason, and
After the Twilight Zone the movie incident, the
that's about I don't know 7 or 8 years after that incident. Weird.
yeah,
It's strange. But
yikes.
yeah, if you don't know what happened on Twilight Zone the movie, let me explain. We can all go a bit silent on this moment. But yeah, so this is a sort of anthology project that included fucking George Miller, Steven Spielberg, Joe Dante, and John Landis. The Twilight Zone movie. Not a big a moneymaker, but it did in fact exist, and it's probably a fine movie. But one of the segments which John Landis directed included a scene where they're running through this like pond. The main actor, I forget his name, but yeah, him and two children actors were doing this scene, and tragically, during this production, the helicopter went out of control, which was blowing in all the shit, and it was also doing like I guess more wider view of the scene. It crashed, and the three people in that pond, they sadly passed away instantaneously in that moment. This was not professionally handled if you look into the case because
Yeah,
what happened was John Landis got these children actors by bribery, not by child labor laws, but by bribery. So that's another weird detail to think about. And another thing is John Landis just generally did not care for the safety of the actors when setting up this entire sequence, which was very dangerous in concept already. So that kind of sucks. And so, tragically, and from his own control, you cannot say this was an accident because this was a deliberately dangerous set that he chose
See that.
to make these decisions of. He is director. He's the one that has to handle all these
See,
things. He not.
this is always the fucked up part of that story to me because it's not like something they could have seen coming. There were warning signs, and John Landis, out of callousness or just plain just obliviousness, just was like, "Nah, it'll be fine." And then, well, what do you know? You accidentally killed two people. Thanks a lot, John. And now
I
that's just
know I've seen footage of the crash, which I think is forever ingrained in my memory now, and I know some of the details of what happened to those bodies, but I will not go into that since that is not the point of this. But I just will say, it is so fucking odd that this man just happens to be in this movie, and kind of just feels fitting because this is a TV movie. It's cheap. No one gives a single shit about John Landis anymore because he's a terrible person.
no,
Every director
no.
he ever knew has disassociated with him since then. Spielberg has just outright resented him, and he could have. And people were gonna say he was gonna be the next Spielberg, but guess what? He made a couple of very, very, very bad decisions. So that's he deserves this fate to be in Psycho 4 at the beginning. This is a weird
Yeah,
ramble. Probably
it's
very
kind of a
tonally
sad like
clashing.
note, but
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, it just kind
That
of adds
it's
to the
just
weirdness of this movie. The kind of sadness and patheticness
yeah,
of this movie. Because you have.
yeah, but I don't know. Just it just like I don't know. I already just went over like why I don't think a Psycho prequel works, which I won't go over that again. But the problem with Psycho 4, in addition to that, is it won't fucking pick a lane. Like sometimes it like wants to be a half sequel where it goes by, but then we get all these flashbacks of Norman's childhood with his mother, who's like bad
His
or
mother, who
like
also has sort of
oh.
Norman's thing where he's like two sides to her. She's like psychotic and then just normal. And you also have this husband who's like teaching him how to play, how to like box. And there's later
Mhm.
on, there's really funny like fucking apparitions that show up, like say, "Hey, don't you want to play ball?" And then just, Anthony Perkins' expression in those moments are really fucking
Yeah, yeah.
goofy. Those are funny. But
Mhm.
yeah, this is just a very
Yeah.
sad movie because it tries to add something to the Psycho universe, but no, it doesn't. It's kind of a sad, pathetic group of cast members and directors and writers who probably didn't want to make this movie and
I
forcing
doubt
themselves to make
anyone
it.
did. It just it's
And
just
John
sad.
Landis is there for some reason. I just
Ruh-roh.
just a pathetic movie because somehow they haven't
Yeah.
caught him after Psycho 3. And why would Norman admit his crimes on live television if even if he was like trying to free himself from Mother? He did that before. And then they're trying to be
At this
like,
point,
no, this.
Norman's freed himself of Mother like three fucking times. Like, come on, man, this isn't
Yeah,
doing
and then there's like,
anything.
oh, I'm
Isn't
gonna
that what
burn the
Psycho 3 was
house.
about?
Yeah, I'm gonna burn the house and ask you to remove the spirits of Mother. And that's like sort of the conclusion
Like,
to all
what?
of it.
Doesn't this? It tries to be such a fucking dramatic conclusion, but it falls flat in its
It
face.
sounds
None of it
dramatic in concept,
makes
but
sense.
we're four movies in. Two of these are unnecessary. You could have left it at Psycho 2 and included that burning house ending. But no, this is what we
Yeah.
get.
I
This is what
don't
we
know.
got.
I mean, well, I'd include Psycho 3, but that's not a good movie. I just like it. But I don't know. We could have had a nice Psycho trilogy. Then we have three other movies that are not as interesting at all. But
Yeah, I just don't
I don't
get
know.
why no one would go on this podcast and why this podcast, no, this like fucking news broadcast, they're like still live, like airing all of this, and no one has stopped this at all throughout the 90
Also, I
minute
don't
runtime.
fucking get how. Also, another thing is, if Norman is supposedly this famous, I don't see how people don't recognize like his voice. Like he goes under
Oh,
like a
my name is
fucking pseudonym or
Ed.
something.
See, get it? Because
Yeah, it's
it's,
like
it's
don't
reference to
forget
Ed
about Ed.
Gain. Yeah, it's a reference to Ed Gain. Get it? Get it?
Oh God, I didn't even make that connection. That's fucking lame. Come
Yeah,
on.
that's
My name's
fucking
Ed
lame.
Gein. Fuck off. But
It's so dumb. And then
yeah,
like they keep going on about this. And there's one part where he like imitates the flashbacks, like it's like the young Norman falls to the ground, and so does older Norman, which makes no sense continuity wise. I don't think he's that psychotic enough to do that.
No.
No, makes no sense. And he apparently has a wife. I don't know how that happened, especially after Psycho 3. Red Letter Media interpreted it as, oh, he's slowly becoming more socially aware, but also that makes no sense considering the timeline. I don't get what's happening with
Where
that.
does he have the room to become more socially aware though? He gets like locked away twice,
Yeah,
or he doesn't learn anything. Especially in 2 and 3, he's just a fucking goofball there. But eh,
yeah. This is not even like goofball like. This is not goofball Norman. This is more of just sad Norman, kind of like just
yeah,
elderly
I
Norman.
don't
It's
know.
that makes sense considering what he was going through at the time, but that just makes it even more sad that this exists. And there's a lot less
Yeah,
to talk about from these other sequels because I have less notes for them. I haven't done research on them. Second of all, they're just boring. They're lacking in so
yeah,
many things. And I've neglected to mention the Base Motel 1987 thing because no one cares. No one
mm.
cares. I don't think
I think
anyone
even
cares
if
if we
I
talk
paid
about it.
attention to it, I'd be like, well, this is who cares? If short of it, if it was a full series, it would be fucking boring because the movie was boring, and I there's nothing to get you invested there. It was much more interesting when I talked about fucking Michael Richards saying the N word. That's the best part of Bates Motel. There isn't like there's nothing to that, and if there's a little more, but still, these fucking really, I just really wish the Psycho franchise was cut in half because I like Psycho 1, I
I
love
like Psycho
Psycho
2.
2, and
Yeah,
I
I
like
can.
Psycho
I'm fine
3.
with Psycho 3 existing. I'm fine with it. But anything else, I
But
don't
then
care.
this
Stop.
other half of movies are like, ugh. In fact, the last movie we're gonna talk about is so bad, it even
Dude,
got
you
a
got no
Razzie
Razzie for worst
for
picture,
worst picture,
which it
which it
should
should
have
have won,
won, by the
but
way.
by the way, yeah, yeah. We're gonna get into Psycho 98 for as little there is there now, or
All
do you
right,
have more on
let's get
Psycho?
into it. Let's get into it.
Okay,
Final one.
so fucking 38 years after Psycho 1, our boy Gus Van Sant, which by the way, I
Director
hate how
of
he presents
Elephant,
this movie,
My Own Private
and
Idaho, and fucking Milk. Like those are three acclaimed
Goodwill
movies.
Hunt, yeah,
Yeah, Goodwill
and
Hunting
Goodwill
too.
Hunting. Yeah, so he's
Those are
coming in.
acclaimed
He's like,
movies.
he. So basically, Gus Van Sant has described this movie in a way that I don't like at all. Where he's like, "Well, see, I'm making the Psycho to prove that you can't make a Psycho sequel. It's
Yeah,
like
this
in a
is what.
social experiment, you know." It's like, well, no fucking shit. You remake Psycho shot for shot, and it's bad.
Yeah, let me read some quotes
How
from you.
much?
This is
How many
what he said
scientists did it
was
take to figure that one out?
I'm gonna paraphrase this
Gus.
one. I'm gonna paraphrase
Okay.
these multiple paragraph long quotes. So there's a whole reason behind it. I think the process of doing it was the learning. It wasn't necessarily about the result. It wasn't really about learning about Hitchcock. It was more about during that '90s the joke about the executives that would rather make a sequel than they would make an original piece. So it's kind of basically a big middle finger to Hollywood, which I guess it succeeded at some point. And he started to come up with this idea after he made a Drugstore Cowboy, where he's like, yeah, they all wanted to meet with him, all these executives, and he was like becoming disassociated by the fact that he was like kind of entering the industry, and so it was like, yeah, I want to make a Psycho remake, shot for shot. And when he originally pitched that, they thought it was a joke. They said, "What are you talking about? Why would you do this?" What they said was they thought it was silly, ridiculous, absurd, and they said we will not be doing a Psycho remake, which should have ended by there.
They
It should
did
have
a
been.
Psycho remake.
They should have just left it at that pitch. Imagine a world without the Psycho 1998 remake. I think it would be a
Probably not
genuinely
much would change,
not
really,
much would
but
change. It would mean nothing. It means nothing. It's not even worth Worst Picture. I'm outside a bit. It's not worth it because it's not really that bad of a movie because it's the exact same movie but with worse acting, worse directing, and
yeah,
just a very meaningless intention. Very meaningless.
yeah, exactly. it
He literally
sounds.
said, so let me go on this full quote.
Yeah.
So, it didn't work, but the idea was whether or not you could remake something and it would repeat the box office success. That was sort of the weird science experiment.
Mhm.
It's more important
Yeah.
now, I think, because people like yourself will ask questions about it. It's more alive than now than it was back when it failed, just like the art or the modern world. That's what I
Probably when he
that
said
that's
that he
that's
sounds
what I said that
fucking
in my review.
pretentious.
He sounds pretentious.
Yeah.
My
Yeah,
God.
and I don't know. See, the thing is, I really, in a way, he did make an experiment, but he wasn't smart. He just did a simple thing. It's like this movie is a really good thought exercise in how a good script does not equal a good movie. That sounds stupid, but like I mean, because like
This is
sure,
honestly,
sure,
this is
like
one of the this is one of
despite
those. Oh, oh wait, what? What the fuck happened?
There was a little Spanish flea, a record star. He thought
What? What? What just happened?
that fuck. Sorry, I accidentally closed my Discord tab. I use browser, that's why. But
Oh,
anyway,
yeah, yeah,
so
yeah. Anyway, back what we were
back to
saying.
those fucking.
Yes.
But anyway, back to pretend there wasn't a couple seconds of awkward silence. Back to what we were saying. So sure, it has the original Psycho story, which is a solid story as we went over in our original segment. But first of all, like, it's even despite being shot for shot, does it look as good? Fuck no, because it doesn't have that black and white look that makes the first movie have that eerie atmosphere. Does it have good acting? Fuck no.
No,
Vince Vaughn, you fucking clown who I just associate with 2000s comedies, can he be Norman Bates? No. No,
no.
he can't.
I mean, he
He's
kind of looks like
pathetic.
the original book version of what Norman Bates was, but
But that's
also
the
no.
thing, because the original Psycho knew if you're making a movie, you have to adapt it to better fit that medium and story. Because Norman Bates in this movie is a fucking creep, which I guess is the point. But I don't know, it just doesn't work as well. I don't know. It
See,
makes the movie just
it's
look
like the
more
movie is trying
lame.
to incorporate the original book into like an adaptation that does not like require it. It's based off an adaptation, but it's still adapting two different things with although they're from the same source material, they interpret the themes in different ways. So why are you doing this? I know it's your
Exactly.
thought. I know it's your thought experiment, but why go through the effort of a year? Probably like at least a 6 week long like production shoot. Then you have to edit the movie. Then you have to do press for the movie, and you have to do all these interviews for this movie. And for what? A shot for shot remake of Psycho. Like why?
It just
Pointless.
doesn't.
It's a
There's
pointless
nothing
endeavor.
to it. Like I don't know. It's so embarrassing because when you get to the movie's most iconic scenes, like when the shower scene happens, it's just embarrassing. Like I've seen parodies of the shower scene that are jokes that look more faithful than fucking whatever this is. Like, what even
Poignant
like
example. Itchy and Scratchy and Marge. No, that was the best one.
oh my god, yeah, the mallet. That's yeah, no, that's way better than this. But it just
Yeah.
like it's just so embarrassing. And I guess that I don't know. Let's go again into the to why Anthony Perkins was such a good casting because he's like a I don't know. I don't mean to judge him by physical appearance ever, but he's a very like he's like a slim meek guy. So when he's like putting on the thing to be dressed up as Mother on your first viewing, if you don't know the twist, you're not immediately like, oh no, that's Norman. You're like, oh,
It's a
that's
timid
an
man. A
old
timid
lady.
man.
How? Yeah, exactly. An old lady. How could she do that? But because Vince Vaughn doesn't look like that, you know it's just fucking Vince Vaughn in a wig, and it looks stupid.
Also, the
Like,
fact that
what
it's not
is
in
that?
color makes it look worse because it makes it obvious. You can see like
Yeah, no,
Vince
that's another
Vaughn's
thing.
face
The
underneath
lack
that.
of color disguises it better, which like adds to it. And it's like, what even? It's just pathetic, and like none of the actors are like as well at all. Vince Vaughn is our big example. You're not Norman, bro. You're not Norman.
Bro,
But
bro,
on
bro thinks
everyone
he belongs
else's,
on the team. Like, come on, like, come on.
bro, blood thinks he's Norman Bates. but,
But yeah, like,
but yeah,
what
it's
was the
just
point of that? I just don't get it, man.
mm,
Oh my god.
yeah.
And I wanted to bring up
Mhm.
this review because I kind of hate it. If I look at the Psycho Letterbox page, one of the top reviews, if you look at it, you have a couple half stars, and then you have 5 stars. It's insane if you look at it.
I've seen people try to defend this in the same way Gus Van Sant does, and it's just fucking pretentious. Like, well, it was a social experiment. Like, who the fuck are you, Grand God? Get out of here with this bullshit.
Yeah, like
It's,
you can't just do a social experiment by wasting like 6 months of your time working on a movie that literally is just meant to prove Hollywood can't do remakes. It's like, wow. Sorry, but remakes are still exist. They're still happening, dumbass. You didn't do anything.
uh,
You
honestly, Psycho 98 is kind of a plague because guess what? Guess what we have now? Disney live action remakes that are bullshit and
Yeah,
just do the
if you
same
check,
source
I
material,
just checked
sometimes one
server.
for one.
I saw a photo of the Snow White remake, and I think I want to gouge my eyes out.
Yeah,
Yeah, that
yeah.
was, oh god. Yeah,
Nah, see, see, it's fucking decades earlier and things haven't changed. If we don't learn from the mistakes of Psycho 98, we're doomed to repeat it with bullshit like this.
like I
Like, what
said, we
even?
have not evolved as a society in terms of pop culture because ever since the '90s, I think we can never have like a French New Wave. We can never have like the the talkies era. We can never have like an evolution. We've reached the peak of pop culture, and so now we're just kind of repeating it now. And this is what the result is. This is what it is.
Mhm.
So thank
It's
you,
just,
Gus Van Sant. You gave us a pointless experiment that did nothing. You absolute
yeah,
clown.
it's like the
God.
most value I get from this movie is when I hear Gus Van Sant's name for a split second. I'm like, it's a pretty sweet Gus Johnson reference. But that's not even a compliment. That's
But yeah,
just the name.
I'm gonna try to read this very long review. It's by Audrey Lorraine. Bad emoji.
Andrew.
Yeah. 5 stars, with heart. With heart. Rewatched
Okay.
May 2nd, 2021, and she opens with Gus Van Sant's camp recreation of Psycho is commonly criticized for not adding anything to Hitchcock's film because it
It
doesn't.
doesn't. Well,
That this
actually, it adds a shot of Norman Bates jacking off. So I guess it added that.
well, I think because I think
Move.
later in the review they're like, but this criticism
Hmm.
overlooks the fact that we must be knowing audience members for it to be true, which is the fact that Van Sant readily anticipates this. To me, this always felt like more of a camp recreation of Psycho than a remake.
Uh-huh.
Despite its fidelity to the source material,
What does that even mean? What are you saying?
I would
What
argue it
do you
works
mean?
entirely because we know Hitchcock's film inside and out. It's clear from the final shot of Marion's eva- evacuation. Fuck. Evacuation juxtaposed with the title "In Memory of Alfred Hitchcock" that the film does not intend to bury its predecessor. Psycho 1998 is merely another step in our relationship with the original film.
Oh
See
fuck! This
Thomas
has
Leach's.
an that's awful. In memory of Alfred Hitchcock, as if he would fucking want this. As if.
It is well
Fuck
aware that no
you.
matter how hard anyone tries, we will try not to bury Hitchcock's legacy, even if a lot of things Hitchcock had gave us had negative consequences. Thus, Van Sant cleverly uses the persuasiveness of Hitchcock and Psycho in popular culture against us, twisting and undermining our understanding of these works as highly unusual camp recreation of a canonical work. That doesn't make any sense. Now,
Does it mean anything? What are you saying? I don't
camp
understand.
recreation. That is not true. That is not true. Because they're using deliberately the same music, so they're trying to recreate that vibe without understanding what the original was. But I guess that's the intention. So anything that you're trying to say about this movie that it quote unquote tries to recontextualize the original is not true. Because it isn't. It's trying to say a big middle
It's
finger to
literally
Hollywood.
not. That just
That is
it's
literally
nothing.
factual evidence. And even if you're looking at it without thinking about director's interpretation and all that shit, what you're looking at here does not make any sense. You're thinking of something completely different, and it's bullshit. It's bullshit. Because later on in the review, they try to talk about how it's more about toxic masculinity and how we already know Norman's the killer, so therefore there's a different view that in which we look at it. Which, how are you supposed to get that from the movie when it's a shot-for-shot remake? Tell me. You get nothing. That's not how it
Exactly.
works. And I guess they're sort of trying to get so much more meaning out of the fact that it's such a confusing film. Because if you're having a shot-for-shot remake, what else is there to add? What are you trying to say here? But now we have to pull out interpretations out of our own ass, even though, fucking Van Sant has said, quote unquote, what exactly this fucking movie is. It's just that people don't do their own research about it. But even if you look at it in this way, it still doesn't make any sense. What are you supposed to get out of a shot-for-shot remake? Even if you're looking at it like a meta level, it just doesn't work. You are just spouting nonsense. This goes on for multiple... Actually, about 12 paragraphs of nonsense.
Yeah, the only thing that is... the only technical shot-for-shot remakes that are actually good are fucking reanimated projects where it's purposefully to just fuck up the movie to make it weird. Like Shrek Retold or something. That's an entirely different genre. Psycho 98, is literally a shot-for-shot remake. And like I said, it's just a thought process. You could have the best fucking script in the world, but if your actors are shit and your movie looks like shit, then you're gonna get nowhere. And Psycho 98's gotten nowhere. It's what is this movie even doing?
What they say later on in the review is
Nothing.
that subverts it by recreating all the same tricks that make us empathize with Norman, but in this context, we already know he's the killer, and we're put in this uncomfortable spot.
But you could just do that if you fucking rewatch the first movie, you idiot.
Exactly. And another thing, they point out how the casting that it sort of recontextualizes it, which it doesn't. Because they're saying, it's more accurate to the book, which makes us quote unquote confront his toxic masculinity. Which, that's the main thing about the book, and it's interpreted differently in the movie, but it doesn't work in either way because it doesn't make any sense. It
just doesn't.
What?
It's just weird.
Just by saying that it's observing the fact that, look, we got different casting, we got different person, so therefore it makes it more deep because we're looking at it in a recontextualized lens. When no, literally, no. And even if we're just doesn't make any sense from just viewing it as a movie and then viewing it with the intentions of the director in mind. With the intention of the director in mind, he literally said the movie failed. So, give up trying to defend this movie because it is not worth defending. It is not good. I don't hate it. Despite how angry I seem. I don't hate this movie. I gave this a 4 out of 10. Very generous 4 out of 10. Because it's just...
I have it a lot lower, but just because I hate the idea of it. I don't know. As a watching experience, it's it feels like I'm being talked down to because I'm it's that line from Psycho, it's that line from Psycho, duh, I remember when that happened in the first movie. It's but it doesn't have soul. Where's the soul to this? And surprise, surprise, none of the iconic scenes even work in this context. We went over, it's ooh. And all the characters you thought were boring in Psycho 1960, guess what? They're not even acted well in Psycho 1998. So, fuck that shit. Nothing works.
It's weird that so many big actors are attached. Viggo Mortensen's in this? Julianne Moore? That's fucking crazy. I don't believe it myself.
Yeah, people have
William H. Macy's here? That is the strangest thing. Because he appears for 6 minutes. Is it just me, or does it go by faster? The movie goes by faster. It's weird.
I knew it was happening this time, so it went by that faster by that prospect. But
no, apparently it's a condensed runtime compared to 102 minutes compared to the 109 minutes. So it's weird.
I'm not sure what they cut out. I couldn't tell you specifically anything minor stuff that maybe just shorter. Well, I was gonna say shorter credits, but the original Psycho doesn't have credits. It doesn't even make sense. What did they cut out?
I think they just they did a cliff notes of Psycho. That's what they did. Yeah. And it's just it's experimental. Wow, does that make it a better theater experience on a meta level? Not even on a meta level, it makes it a better experience because it's just kind of whatever.
See, I could do anything, and I could justify it by saying it's an experiment. Xander, I could punch you right now and say it was an experiment to see how you'd react to that. Would that be a good idea for me to punch you? No.
No.
But it had a meaning. It was an experiment. That's what Psycho 98 is. It's a bullshit experiment. None
It's
of it makes sense, damn it.
like I can't say this without laughing. Psycho 98 had original ideas. Who the fuck says shit like this? Like,
Well, at least Psycho 98. Well, it literally doesn't. But at least Psycho 98 had an original social experiment. Who the fuck says shit
says shit
like
like
this?
that. Like, doesn't make any sense. Stop it. Oh my god.
No, dumb. Damn it. Fuck you, Psycho 98. You deserved that Razzie for worst picture. Which it did. Did it win? I don't know.
Did
Like, I
it
forget how
win?
the video goes.
That is
It's
the
like, no,
saddest
because
thing.
well, see, I know Godzilla 98 didn't win because that's why he says which it should have won, by the way.
Which it should
But
have
there's
won,
nothing
by
about
the way.
Psycho 98 winning.
Hold on, let me look at this.
Maybe Avengers. Oh, no, I know. I remember. It was the. Okay, fuck. It's the movie called Burn, Hollywood Burn.
Yeah,
Directed.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
about
Yeah,
this.
Burn Hollywood.
Yeah, it's
Anthony,
about.
Alan Smithy.
Yeah.
Right. I remember this.
Yeah, it's about the fucking synonym Alan Smithy, which was given to
Yeah.
directors who hated their movies.
Yeah, and
That's
then the
all.
director of this movie ironically used it. So, yeah.
Yeah, an Alan Smithy film, Burn Hollywood. That was the worst picture, which because it's actually a 1997 movie when it was worst picture for the year 1998. Well,
But yeah, apparently for worst remake or sequel, Godzilla, Psycho, and the Avengers they all tied.
God.
They all tied. Like for worst remake or sequel, that's kind of sad.
Well, Godzilla 98 is better than Psycho 98 because at
Yeah,
least
no,
Godzilla
okay.
98
Yeah.
had
Gus Van Sant won worst director that year. He beat Alan Smithy, Roland Emmerich, Jeremiah S. Chick, and Michael Bay for worst director.
Oh my god, I forgot Armageddon got like fucking Razzies that year, which is super weird. Because a lot of people liked Bay in the
Yeah, a lot
90s
of people
before
like.
fucking Bayformers and shit.
Yeah.
But no, I guess critics hated Bay at the time. Fuck, Armageddon, I think that was one of his like kind of good movies. What
It's
happened?
decent. It's decent. I don't.
Yeah, well, I mean, for his filmography, that's good, but.
Yeah.
Um,
Strange.
Fuck,
But
I
yeah,
laughed because I was looking at 1998 on Letterboxd, and if you go by popularity, Armageddon and Cowboy Bebop are right beside each other. That made me laugh for some reason.
I mean, both are the same level of quality, but yeah.
Like, you could do the Real Folk Blues bill with Michael Bay's career. Makes sense.
Would that work?
Uh,
I don't know.
Well, no, because like, no. See, the ending when like Spike collapses and he's like, bang, and that's when he's like, I finished Ambulance, and then he collapses on the floor.
Well, is it? Well, Michael Bay took a long break after Six Underground. I don't know what he's gonna do now.
Yeah,
After
I think he's
Ambulance.
doing another movie, but fuck if I know what it was.
I wouldn't know.
I'll ask Danis. He probably.
I know
knows
there's
what it
no.
is.
I know there's a new one. I know. I remember like looking through. His,
I know he's got
filmography.
something cooking. I don't know what it is.
I know what it is.
I mean,
Yeah.
there's Bad Boys 4, but he's not directing that. That's just
He's not
another
directing that.
Bad
No.
Boys thing.
But yeah,
gotta watch
Psycho
that.
franchise. Overall thoughts?
Uh,
Yeah.
As an overall franchise,
It's better than
I will say
better than most.
there are like I'm glad we got to talk about these movies because I've had a fascination with Psycho as a franchise for a while. A lot of these movies I've wanted to watch for years but haven't. So I'm glad I got to do that for this. It was neat. Way better than our other idea.
Oh yeah. No, if you're
there is
wondering.
no-
If you're wondering. So
There is no Saw episode in the dumps.
yeah, see,
not
originally
real.
this was gonna be the Saw episode. But you see, we rewatched the first three. I rewatched the first. He first watched these first three. By the fourth one, we were just like, okay.
Eh.
And then we just kind of
was like-
quietly kept on delaying for the fifth watch party, the fifth one. Just like, oh, we'll do it this
Oh,
week.
I think
No,
by
we'll do
then
it
we
this
were
week.
like, I think I don't know about you, but I had a certain internal realization in my head where I was like, this is not gonna work. No.
Yeah.
You gotta pull the plug.
Like a week or 2 weeks before, we pulled the plug on it, and so now we were gonna do Psycho, the Psycho franchise. And for all the franchise I did this October, this is the best one. That's kind of sad.
That is kind of
The
sad,
ex
but I
the
will say,
Exorcist franchise for having Exorcist 3, the rest of the movies are total garbage compared to like even the Psycho sequels.
ugh.
So
Oh well, to give entire credit here, I really like Psycho 1, Psycho 2, and Psycho 3. The rest, I can just, you can
I
just
could do her with or
go
without it,
past that.
except for Bates Motel. I just like remove that from memory. Like
Yeah, well, see, the Psycho,
see,
I think quite literally, you could draw a line in the dirt and get rid of half of the
yeah, I could
Psycho
be like
franchise
McGucket where I make an invention just to forget that specific movie.
immediately.
Yeah,
That's good. But yeah, I could see myself rewatching the first three like a lot. So I'm glad we did that at the very least. And it is, I don't know, the Psycho franchise is like a good thought study in the good and bad parts of Hollywood in a way. Because you get a movie like Psycho 2 that understands the original and knows how to develop it neatly. You get a movie like Psycho 3, which is just fucking nuts. You get boring sequels like 4 and Bates Motel, which wasn't like, it's not a traditional sequel, but they don't need to exist, but they have their own thing. And then you have Psycho 98, which is a complete like just demonstration of Hollywood having stupid ideas. But it was fun to talk about. And it
yeah,
really isn't that all that matters. The
yeah.
answer is no, but we'll say it's what matters. We'll
Well,
go with
they
that.
all each have their own like production history behind them, and their own thematic elements that kind of tie them all together, but also counter each other.
Yeah.
Because I think I finally figured out what Psycho 1960 is about. It's a movie about hidden secrets. It's about identity. It's about a lot of things. It's about sexual repression. It's about actually just a ton of things, and mostly it is probably one of the most influential horror movies of all time. And now it only breathes through other horror tropes throughout these sequels in varying quality, but all of them are interesting
Yeah.
in some way.
That's true.
And I guess that means we can just lead into a rambling hour, or maybe we won't even do that. I don't know.
Uh, wow.
Yeah, but yeah,
Um,
that was the Psycho franchise, and you can leave now. You can leave now.
yeah. Bye bye. Happy Halloween, everybody.
I still have one more episode after this that involves Halloween, but
Oh,
that's for another time.
oh, but it's not gonna fall on a Saturday. It'll be Halloween in November. Huh. It's not like both Campy Cast Halloween specials are coming out in November due to scheduling conflicts. Ha! I couldn't even
Campy
imagine doing that.
cast. What's a campy cast? What's that?
What the heck is that? Oh, I think it's like. See, I have dementia, so I talk to my imaginary friend named Anthony, and
Oh, is
we
this your like Aurora Borealis? You know, it's just like imagine it.
yeah. I like talk to him. He's my I'll bring him in now. My imaginary friend Anthony. We'll
Mhm.
bring him in. Hold on. Anthony, would you like to say something? Oh, what's that? You're stealing my money because you're a greedy Jew. Oh,
Whoa.
sorry about
What did you
that,
call him a
Anthony.
Jew? Does he have a Jew
Oh,
nose?
oh man, I'm telling you, my voice is muffled because his nose is like